Hello guys and welcome to PUBG Bootcamp. This is a new series focusing on key aspects of PUBG gameplay to help players become better decision makers in game and to become better all-round players. In today's episode we are focusing on when you should and should not push after getting a knock on an opponent in duos or squads. As ever, this episode is primarily for PC players on FPP mode, but TPP players and console players might also find some of this information useful. So to be clear, today we are focusing on when you get a knock on an enemy player who is in a different building to you. The key decision for you is then whether you should push or not, and if you do decide to push, how you should do it. In the background, there's going to be some recent footage I've captured of me playing with some friends where we have made both good and bad decisions, so you can see for yourself what works and what doesn't work and what you might have done differently in those situations. So let's start by talking the philosophy behind why most players think they should push after getting a knock. The common approach is that you should push your advantage after getting a knock. This is not only because the enemy team will be down the player you've knocked, but you have also possibly taken out another player out of the fight temporarily while they rush to pick their teammates up. However, pushing a downed enemy is not always in your interest, so let's explore why you should and shouldn't push. So to start with, let's talk about when you should push. Ideally, you should be pushing in duos when you get a knock on the enemy player, or if you're in squads, you should push after getting a knock when it's clear you have an overwhelming advantage when you do push. What do I mean by overwhelming advantage? This is when you know you have knocked one or more opponent players and you have intel on where the rest of their teammates are, and it is clear that that fight is then advantageous for you to take. In practice, this will mean that you can see all of the opponent players or you've had recent intel on their positions, and you know that in pushing, you're not going to lose any of your own teammates in securing those kills. So now that we've talked a little bit about when to push, let's talk about how you go about pushing. It is always best to push with utility and aggression and taking a route that exposes you and your teammates to the least amount of returned fire. So starting off with lethal grenades, we're talking about frag grenades or molotovs. Generally speaking, it's a good idea to throw these grenades at the player you have just downed. Not only will this help you secure the kill that you have just got the knock for, but you may also knock or kill any of their teammates trying to revive them. Just remember not to overexpose yourself to throw a grenade. It is usually a good idea to throw a grenade from a position where the enemy does not have line of sight on you. For example, this means throwing it over an object such as a rock or a wall, or around a corner, so bouncing it off a window or bouncing it off a wall. If you do not have any lethal grenades, then smoke grenades may help you approach without being seen, and flash grenades may help you enter a building that is being defended by one or more of the downed opponent's teammates who are waiting for you to push. The final thing that you should do is dictate the speed that is most advantageous to you and your team. To be clear, this does not always mean pushing in as fast as possible. If you know you have downed a player for the second time, it's in your interest to prolong a gunfight as long as possible as they will be bleeding out rapidly. Alternatively, if you know the downed player was alone, or there is only two of them in a position and there are four of you, you will want to push as quickly as possible. So, in contrast to that, now let's talk about when you should not push and how not to push. First of all, it is not a good idea to push when the zone does not favour it. Remember, PUBG is a battle royale game, and if you are not in the zone, you cannot be in the fight for the final circles. I often see players so thirsty for the kill, they will sacrifice their circle position and the rest of the game just in order to secure the kill of the downed opponent. If you get a knock and the circle does not favour you, use this opportunity to disengage and take a more advantageous circle position. Remember, the longer you're in the game, the more opportunities you have to get more kills. Another situation where it's not a good idea to push is when you knock only one opponent in a squad game. This means there are two or three other players ready for you to push, and if you've knocked someone in the building with only one or two easily defended access points, then remember they will hold the advantage. Another situation that is easy to forget is that your other teammates might not be geared for the fight. If you're the only player geared for the fight and you push to knock and then get downed yourself, your team has just lost its greatest asset. Your decision to push may turn what was an advantage into an irrecoverable disadvantage for your team. final situation I'm going to talk about when you should not push is when you have incomplete information. If you have knocked a player but have little or no intel on where their teammates are, then it may not be a good idea to push, as you may be walking into a well set up ambush or defended position.
Wait, what have you got? K98.
I took an 8 times.
Now that we've talked about situations on when you should not push, let's talk about how not to push. To begin with, don't push
Do
alone.
you need some 7.6? Yeah.
This is one of the biggest mistakes I see most often. Players who get the knock are often hungry for the kill above all else. If they push alone and then get killed themselves, not only are they then out of the game, but it puts their teammates at a numerical disadvantage for no gain. Your teammates will not thank you for this, and it is a selfish play for personal gain in a duo or team match where the odds of success are significantly better when you have a complete team going into the final circles. Secondly, be sure not to push across open ground. Pushing across open ground is always risky in PUBG, and it is an easy kill for the knocked opponent's teammates waiting for the push. They may have teammates watching their approaches to the down player, and you may be walking straight into their sights. Finally, if you have knocked an opponent in the upstairs of a building, then not only are you pushing a building, which is always difficult, but the opponents will also hold a high ground. It is much easier to defend a building than to take it, and this is especially true for a multi-storied building. It is easy for just one player to take out multiple opponents, pushing a narrow choke point such as a staircase or corridor. Now that we've spoken about some of the theory behind when I believe you should and should not push, let's turn to some live gameplay analysis to further see how this looks in practice. This will be a mixture of live comms and also some commentary of me analysing particular plays.
Oh, fucking nades, man. He's in.
One's outside. Oh,
Fuck, that was right on me.
one knocked. One's dead. Both dead. Ha 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 ha. Nice, mate.
So there we have it, guys. In that situation, at the beginning of the clip, I was knocked first when the opponents decided to push. I was then brought up by my teammate Wookie before they were able to make a decisive push. They did a good job trying to use utility to kill us both without exposing themselves. Ultimately, when they got the second knock on Wookie, I knew they would then be rushing upstairs as quickly as possible. I set myself up to give myself that peeker's advantage and just sprayed down the stairs, and that's where it started to go sour for them. I think this is a classic example of why it's not always best to push a building, even when you do have the knock and the advantage in numbers.
Right window.
Shot at the door. Right.
Door. That man down.
Okay, come crawl to me.
One sec, I'm crawling into this little room. And then you can shut the door too.
Knocked him.
Good stuff.
Nice. Alright, you get him out. Copy
So,
that.
I'm holding bottom floor.
I'm watching the windows.
I'm going to push across the street once I pick Max up. If someone wants to come with me.
There's no point.
What
There's
do
no
you mean there's no
advantage to it. You're just going to expose yourself.
I just knocked someone, mate.
Oh, he's up.
So, in this situation, both teams have just traded knocks. One key thing to notice is that Avengent decides to push after a significant amount of time has passed since the knock, and he chooses to do so alone without knowing if the rest of the team is geared for the fight. If you look closely at the minimap, you can also see we are closer to the zone than the opponents, but nonetheless, we still have to move for the zone. So it's not looking like this push favours the team at all. Finally, anyone familiar with Sanhok will know this building only has one very easily defended staircase leading to the upstairs where the knocked opponent was last seen.
Crawling in his
Yeah, crawl in there and then close the door.
Thanks.
Do you need bandages or anything?
No, I'm alright. You got stim?
Nope.
Oh, prone, little fucker.
I don't think this.
I hear him on.
Yeah.
So there we have it, guys. Not only did
Must say I told
Avengers
you so.
fail to secure the kill for the
Well,
down
it's
player,
no.
but the decision to push alone into an easily defended position has now put the rest of the team at a significant disadvantage for the rest of the game.
He's in the same place. One sec. I got him. Fuck, he's low. He's still in the building on my mark.
Yeah, he's
He's
in the
the right
back
window.
room. Back room.
Knocked him.
Nice. Where's his fucking buddy?
I think maybe we push this advantage.
You want to? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this situation, I've just secured a knock in duos against an opponent in a single story building.
Did that go in? He's in that. Watch out, another one going up.
Oh!
That's the same guy knocked twice. Yeah, he's in the same bit. Bathroom. Dead.
Nice. I have the hill.
So a good use of utility here, and recognising that I had the second knock on the opponent helped me decide how to take the engagement. However, my lack of communication almost got my teammate killed from the friendly grenade.
He's just molly. Oh shit, he's in here with me.
Welcome. He's in again.
Two of them.
One knocked.
Pick up Wookie, I'm covered.
Okay.
Don't worry, that's me. Oh no! Oh my god. Are you taking the piss? I hadn't realized. Oh, what a noob.
So there we had a bit of a scrappy fight, where after knocking Wookie, the enemy team goes all into a building with incomplete information and loses 2 players as a result.
Don't. Yeah. I've tagged one with the entrance door. Three northeast, that's somebody.
Oh fuck, he's knocked me.
Stay.
He's pushing.
Get upstairs. There's a helmet here.
So the opponents have now decided to push a multi-story building with no use of utility, and while Wookie does eventually go down again, pushing a narrow choke point ultimately leads to the entire enemy duo being wiped out.
One knocked.
Oh, motherfucker. He's picking his mate up.
He's lit, but not dead.
He's upstairs, yeah?
Yeah. Ah, fucking missed a
Grenade
nade.
Knocked one.
Nice, let's push it now.
Up here, another nade upstairs. What's that?
So it's Vengeance's decision to push it now that will lead to his death.
Okay.
We have the advantage, we still have
Nice.
utility, and rather than pushing up the stairs where the enemy are waiting for the quite obvious push that is
Nice,
about to
mate,
follow, Vengeance could have peeked up the stairs through the window or used grenades to secure the kill. Also, looking at the kill feed, I knew it was the player's second knock at least, so time was on our side and there was no need to rush this engagement.
Push now.
Yeah.
Yeah, left corner.
So the decision to push now almost goes horribly wrong straight away as the enemy shoot at me while vaulting out the window. I know not to push inside a building straight away as the enemy may still be outside, and even if they are inside, it's better to know exactly where they are before pushing rather than entering into a potential trap with no intel.
I've got 4.
Oh, someone's smashing
Oh.
windows.
That's in the red building.
Yeah.
He must be looking like southwest, south. Smashing the windows upstairs.
Get into this 2-story behind me. Join me and shut the door.
Ooh. So I look for a helmet quickly.
Hello, I see him top right window. Knocked one.
So what you're about to see here is for me a perfect example of using utility to its fullest. While I don't agree with the game balance allowing you to carry so many frag grenades, while it does remain part of the game and part of the established meta, be sure to use frag grenades to their fullest extent. It is always better to be in a position to damage your opponent without giving them an opportunity to damage you back.
Got him. Watch out, they bounced off.
In this final clip, I want you to compare the decisions made by me after we get the knock, and then compare that to the opponent team after they get a return knock on us. Let me know if you were the opponent team, would you have made the same decisions, and if so, why?
Behind that rock.
Yeah. Yeah, let him crack on. Someone's shooting from one north now.
I see him.
Oh, he got me.
Direct north. Direct north.
I'm down if you can pick me up, please.
Oh shit, okay.
No more peeking for me.
He's got a white helmet on, you can't miss him. Scumbag. And clearly a fair shot.
Oh. I'll blame it on the lag.
I would. Or the boogie.
Or the boogie.
One of the two.
Never change. What's that? I'm just gonna explore this other
Close.
house.
Close, I think.
Oh yeah. They've pushed west.
I don't know how I survived.
I can hear him speaking on VoIP. He said he doesn't know how he survived. They must be getting shot from somewhere else. On me. Oh!
And that's it,
Unlucky
guys.
dudes,
I hope you
will
found this video
vote
useful.
GG.
If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it with your friends, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more content.